It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everybody, where every week we seek inspiration from great men and women to become the heroes and heroines of our own lives. And you are here with your hosts. I am Andrew Bernstein. You are Robert Begley. How you doing today, Robert?
I am unbelievable, Andy. We've covered so many heroes of the Holocaust, but today we're going to talk about one person who found a way to make lemonade out of a lemon that he was handed. And in the midst of this incredible atrocity, he searched for meaning in life. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, and of course, and it was a really sour, bitter lemon. At that, you're talking about the Holocaust.
Yes.
But we're talking, of course, about the brilliant psychiatrist and writer Viktor Frankl, whose dates were 1905 to 1997. Lived a long life, almost the entirety of the 20th century.
Wow. Yeah, that is somebody else, 1905, we know, who was very influential, born that same year. So whenever I see that, I think of novelist, philosopher Ayn Rand. But Viktor Frankl, what a life, what an experience that he went through, and some themes that we'll talk about, Andy, just as relevant today. If you are in the midst of some chaotic, dystopian, bizarro universe, how do you deal with that? What do you grasp in reality that gives you some kind of firm grip where you can move on, especially when other people all around you are suffering and dying? That's number one. Number two, suffering. That's a big part of what Frankl talks about. And I even want to make some comparisons to today's Jordan Peterson. But what's the difference between suffering and struggling? Okay, I actually have some thoughts on that. I'm sure you do as well. And then next thing is love. That was one of the things that got him through this nightmare, was the fact that he loved his wife and his family and didn't know what was happening with them, but he considered that as the salvation of the human experience. So right. I'm sure we'll talk about other things, Andy, but that's...
Yeah, and tragically, his whole family was wiped out in the Holocaust.
Yes, which he did not know at the time, while he was in the concentration camp. That's, he did not know. And I think that was one of the things that kind of helped him, was just remembering the good things about them. And so Frankl, born in Vienna, from an early age.
So let me say, Robert,
Yes.
let me point out, in addition to having an MD, with concentration in psychiatry, he later on gained a PhD in philosophy from the University of Vienna. Yeah. So you could see this is a philosophic issue as much as a psychological one. So you can see why Frankl was so interested in philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. And it's interesting because, like so many people, so many Europeans that we've covered early in life, they had this sympathy towards socialism. It's like, really, again? Like every time, Andy, we get a hero, I'm reading on them, and it's like when they're a teenager, they just have, and of course we see that today as well, because there's this glorification despite the facts of reality showing otherwise. But so he's at a young age, he wants to be a medical doctor, and then he becomes enamored with psychology. And he writes to Sigmund Freud, who's all just coming on the scene. This is early 20th century we're talking about, 15, 16 years old, so in the early 1920s. And Freud keeps a letter that Frankl wrote him. It was so profound that 3 years later, they actually met in person, and Freud remembered Frankl's address just by, like, he actually kept the letter. And so Frankl goes to school, I think University of Vienna. He studies psychology. Yeah. And one other interesting note, Andy, that I came across was he's developing this logotherapy, which was like his own invention, and he got kicked out of school for that. He got kicked out. Have we seen that before in fiction, where you have this radically different idea and it doesn't sit well with the authorities there? So those were some interesting things that I came across, before Frankl,
Well, yeah. Well, I would have been kicked out of school too if I had opened my mouth, about the ideas that I held. I kept my mouth shut in graduate school.
Wow.
Anyway. Uh, but yeah, it's sad that many cases the institutions of learning, especially of higher education, are supposed to cultivate thinking and
Yeah.
instill the attitude of independent thought. Right, the unexamined life is not worth living, Socrates said, and yet too often, even before cancel culture, they would suppress dissidents, especially today. But Frankl was also became friendly with the great psychologist Alfred Adler. And he was part of that. Frankl was criticizing Freud. He critiqued Freud's theories, didn't agree with him in some ways. Worked with Adler, but Adler kicked him out. He got kicked out of Adler's circle also because of his emphasis on meaning as such a big part of of life and of human motivation and of the quest for mental health. So he had to develop his own, and logo is a Greek word, right? We know logos is meaning. So right, logo
logic,
therapy.
account, it has several meanings, but yes, meaning is the central theme here, Andy. And this is where I just think it's so important, the work that he did. And one success that he saw, here's one reason Frankl deserves a Hero Show episode: the number of people who committed suicide. And this is a serious topic. The number of people who he prevented from committing suicide. And he went into one school, and it would be a common thing in Vienna, probably much of Europe, the end of the school year, these teenagers would just commit suicide. I guess it was the pressure. And he went to one school, and the entire year there was just like a complete fall off because one question he asked them: why do you want to commit suicide? And they couldn't answer that. And then he got them through Socratic method of having them talk more and more, and they're hearing a voice. And then he's pointing them in the direction of meaning in life as a central part of the human experience.
Right. Yeah. There's the good news and the bad news. I mean, there are some cultures that really emphasize education, developing the mind, intellectual achievement, all of which is good. But if the parents put so much pressure on the kids that you got to get these, these exalted grades, get into the top universities, and if you don't, you're a failure. This is why it's not a coincidence that the bulk of the suicides took place at the end of the term when the report cards came out. And some of the kids didn't do as well as they wanted or their family wanted. Mm-hmm. And we know this is a problem in some of the Asian countries.
Today.
Today. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in Asian culture, again, there's the good news and the bad news. You're right. You got the tiger mom, mentality. What was that joke? It's not funny. But actually, that joke about the tiger mom who said, he pushed her daughter, and she said, it's true that my daughter committed suicide at age 27, but by God, she played Carnegie Hall at age 26. She's like,
oh man, I never heard that. And
I mean, it's horrible. But Frankl worked with those kids, and one year, I think it was 1931, they had 0 suicides. So Frankl definitely had a beneficent effect.
Yeah, exactly, Andy. So whenever theory and practice work, there's some, I'm in. I want to know more. I especially with something so drastic as committing suicide, and of course, all of this is preparing him for. He lived through World War I. And certainly gained some experience there. And then we get into the 30s, and he's now studying at University of Vienna, and he's working, and then basically it's annexed by the Nazis, and life is completely different. His family is they're all separated. He goes to, he ends up in Auschwitz. I think he was in 3 different concentration camps. And this is the point where he's talking people out of death. He's giving them some kind of hope, but there is just this, it's so overwhelming, the amount of malevolence and suffering and literal death. I mean, he's one of the few people to write about it and give like the gory details, which we don't need to rehash here, but that's what he did. He commits this to his mind, Andy, as well. I mean, all he wanted was paper and pencil, to write his notes. And that was one of the first things they did. They took that from him. So then he had to commit it to his mind, these ideas of logotherapy.
Yeah, and there's the point here, about meaning as the central crux of human life and motivation. It's a I mean, I think it's true. You certainly make a very, very strong case for it. I think you could talk to people. Frankl certainly knew from firsthand experience who are the kinds of people who come through, real painful experiences. Suicide is certainly like the need plus ultra, I guess it's the extreme. It's the extreme reaction to terrible suffering. But there's less a negative reaction. Some people become alcoholics. Some people become drug addicts. Some people just kind of psychologically give up and they become, cynical or bitter or just, their life. They just experience life as empty. But the people who come through these these terrible experiences and come out on the other side stronger, as a general rule, they have something to live for, something that gives meaning to their life, something they want to do. They want to, a fulfilling romantic relationship, or they want to rear a family of healthy, happy children, or they want to write a book, or they want to start their own business, or there's something that they love that fills their life, with passion and meaning. Because, for you and me, our favorite book is, we always mention Ayn Rand's brilliant novel, The Fountainhead, which I strongly recommend everybody to read or reread. And the main character struggles like a junkyard dog. I mean, Ayn Rand even said to budding fiction writers, put as many obstacles in the path of your hero as possible. Make it as difficult for your hero as you can. Well, Howard Roark struggles through all of these impediments and everything, but he loves architecture. He loves building and designing. And he says, in order to excel at something, you have to love the doing. Well, he loved the doing. And that helps you get through all kinds of painful experiences in human life. And there's different factors that go into somebody's life expectancy. You can't entirely escape your genes and things like that. But having meaning in life, having something you love, something to live for, has got to help enhance not only the quantity of years, but the quality of the years that you live. And Viktor Frankl, preeminently among psychologists, emphasized that. So that's why I agree with you. I think he deserves a hero show episode.
Yeah. So let me I have his book, Man's Search for Meaning in Life. And here, it's a couple of excerpts, but I'll start one just talking about this difference in the type of person who tries to work through it and who tends to give up. He says, in spite of the enforced physical and mental primitiveness of the life in the concentration camps, it was possible for spiritual life to deepen. And he says, sensitive people who were used to a rich intellectual life may have suffered much pain. They were able to recreate from their terrible surroundings to a life of inner riches and spiritual freedom. And so this is certainly, he can clearly speak for himself here on how he copes. But Andy, because you just mentioned Howard Roark, I want to come to the second point here. You mentioned that Roark struggles throughout the whole novel, okay? And we could say Frankl struggles. But also Roark says a pivotal point in The Fountainhead is pain and suffering only goes down to a certain point, and then it stops. So let's chat a little bit about this difference between struggling and then suffering.
Yeah. That's a good point. How do I go back to Roark for a second without giving away too much of the plot? He had just designed a masterpiece, and society tore it down, and and just they destroyed it. And his lover, my favorite heroine, Dominique Franken, she's just distraught over this, and all Roark has to do is take one look at her. She doesn't have to say a word, and he says to her, he knows exactly what she's feeling. He said, I don't know. He said, you're wrong. I don't feel that. And anyway, what Rourke is saying here is, yes, this is painful. They killed my baby, but what I'm focused on is I designed it. It was a masterpiece. I know it. You know, it was real. It existed. I know it would, and so do you, Dominique, which means a
Yes.
lot to me also.
Yes.
And what most of society says or does has marginal impact on me. He
Mhm.
says it's a pain that only goes down to a certain point. So there is pain there, but as it has marginal impact on me. And I think what Ayn Rand is showing us here in the character of Rourke, and Viktor Frankl and Ayn Rand differ certainly in their philosophies, but I think there's a point of contact here, a point of congruence, and that is about volition or free
Mhm.
will.
Choice is major. Yep. That
Yeah,
is,
choice. Yeah,
yep.
and I'm
Mhm.
glad to see there's a growing movement today. I don't know if it's in pop psychology, but there's a growing movement today that the realization that happiness is a choice, and
Yes.
it's about choices we make. And I think here we could go through these struggles in our lives, and Frankl in real life went through, like you pointed out, the most hellish struggle you could imagine, surviving a concentration camp. But one thing we have no control over what the Nazis or the communists or what these really bad guys do to us. But there's well, it's very limited.
Yeah.
You gotta fight them physically. But if they disarm you, as Hitler and Stalin both did, disarm the populations and drag you off the gulags or concentration camps, well, I guess you could jump over the wall and walk 4,000 miles to freedom, like in
Mhm.
the long walk. It's very limited what you could do physically against them as one person, but it's internally, intellectually, spiritually, morally, we have, I think part of Frankl's point is we have control over our own attitudes. Well,
Yes.
how we intellectually, morally, emotionally respond to this. And we could choose to focus on values, like you were saying before, Robert, my love for my wife, my family. I want to write this book. I want to get out of here and write a book. I want to get out of here and get back to treating patients. And you could focus on the things that you love. That's where your focus is.
Yeah.
You can't block out all the horrors, but your orientation, your focus, your main line of thinking can be on what you love and what's important to you and what supports life, not what harms or murders life. Frankl's very good on that point. He's very good. You focus on values, you go through the struggle, but you focus on what's really important or what's really good in human life, and it mitigates the suffering a great deal.
Yeah. I'll say this,
Take control
Andy.
of your own inner life, I think, is a simple way to put it.
Yes. Yeah. And your attitude. I mean, that's another major aspect. So I'll draw one other parallel between Frankl and Ayn Rand. One philosopher that influenced both of them is Friedrich Nietzsche. Two quotes of Nietzsche were major in Frankl's life. One is, he that has a why can bear any how. Okay, so look for the essential here, the why versus the how, and that's what Frankl did. And then the second Nietzsche quote is, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. And this guy is the embodiment of that, because the concentration camp, I think it was 1.8 million, only like 600,000 out of 1.8 million were killed. Like 1 in 28 people survived. Okay, a very small number, and Frankl was one of them. And then he turned that around. So that which did not kill him made him stronger. And in this sense, Nietzsche's very mixed philosopher, but he has some inspirational, really punchy aphorisms, and these help Frankl for sure.
Did Nietzsche actually say what doesn't kill me makes me strong? I know it's ascribed to him, but
Okay,
I don't.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he did. It's
In my
ascribed to
reading
him.
of Frankl, I heard that part, that he got that from Nietzsche. So that's,
Yeah, well, it sounds like Nietzsche.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
So but there's a lot of times quotes are put out there, and
Oh yeah, I never go to
they're-
brainyquote.com. I don't recommend. That's for sure.
But yeah, it sounds like Nietzsche. It embodies the best parts. He's a very mixed case, I think, philosophically, but embodies
Yeah.
the best
Yeah,
parts
we know that.
of his philosophy. And I think it really bears a lot of pondering and thinking with Frankl and reflecting with the unexamined life is worth living. If I
Yes.
turn around Socrates'
Yep.
aphorism there, that we can have a great deal of control over our own internal attitudes towards real negative experiences in human life, and the value orientation that Frankl emphasizes, and Rand certainly does. The emphasis on meaning in life. That, as I like to think, with values are the great meaning maker in life. And I can speak personally for just a minute to getting through a lot of painful stuff in my own life, coming out of a crazy family. I won't go into any details. Going through graduate school, a PhD program in philosophy, was very painful. And what helped me get through a lot of this stuff was, to put it colloquially, eyes on the prize. I knew I wanted to write books. I knew, I was gonna be a writer and write books and essays, and it had this meaning. So life had meaning, and so I was able to survive physically and psychologically a lot of these really harmful, painful experiences. I think Frankl's absolutely right.
One thing. Right. He says, one of my favorite quotes, he says, "Our greatest freedom is the freedom to choose our attitude." Okay. And so coming back to experience, and let's bring this to today, Andy. I mean, there's no doubt the last 2 to 3 years, the world has been upside down. Nobody has stayed in whether it's the pandemic, the response to the pandemic, and all this other upheaval. People now want to move on to the appeal of a Jordan Peterson, because he comes in and he has a very clear voice, and he's very articulate in what he's saying, and he's making suffering like central to he's not going with the meaning as much. He's got some meaning in there, I would say, and these are reasons people gravitate to somebody like him. But I do see a difference here between this making the suffering the primary and of a Jordan Peterson, and of a Frankl making the struggle more essential there.
I don't know Jordan Peterson's work that well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
No need to go further there. So let's move on. Andy, what about love? Which he calls the salvation. Like this is, we mentioned, and I have one other quote here that I want to say here, when he's talking about that a thought transfixed me. For the first time in my life, I saw to it that it was into the songs of many poets. He's finally discovering, I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret of human poetry and thought, and that was the salvation of man is through love and by love. And again, love is so, again, quoting Ayn Rand and sticking with the fountain, to say I love you, one must first know how to say the I. And this is exactly what Frankl's getting at, in the sense that, yeah, it's really important to love somebody else, but there's got to be you in there too, and there has to be a motivation for you if we're looking for the salvation, of a person's life. So I want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. First, I'm going to go back to Jordan Peterson for a second.
Sure.
Because I thought of something like while you were speaking. That what I do know about Jordan Peterson's work is I think he's very often a brilliant polemicist against the woke mentality, against the postmodern approach to philosophy. His own positive work. I don't know that well, so I don't want to comment on it. But yeah, the self-love. It's interesting. It's like it's a cliche or a bromide. You hear it over and over again. Some people just flat out against it. They think that if your self-love leads to selfishness in the bad sense, in the conventional sense, that you'll step
Yes.
all over other people, you're victimizing this and others. There were people who accused Mr. Rogers of inculcating self-esteem in these young children, and that's the reason, for the me generation, all they care about is themselves, and they'll victimize others and everything, criticized as innocuous a person as Mr. Rogers was for that. But real self-love is, and some people praise it, but there's a self-esteem movement and everything, but it's superficial at best very often, and oftentimes actually absolutely harmful, because they'll tell, like in some of the schools, they'll focus on, they don't want to fail the kid because it'll harm his self-esteem, and things like that.
There are no losers in sports games, and
yeah, exactly. So you don't want to harm somebody's self-esteem. You just get a participation trophy. There's no winners and losers. There's no excel and mediocre and failure. This is very harmful. I mean, because if you're not going to fail somebody who hasn't learned to read in the early grades, and the kid just keeps being promoted via social promotion, what's it going to do to his self-esteem as a teenager or as an adult when he struggles with the very important skill of reading?
Yeah.
So self-esteem in one part is based on, well, self-esteem is I think real self-esteem and real self-love is based on a legitimate pursuit of excellence. We strive to be the best we can be, above all morally. And I would tell the kids, all right, you lost a basketball game. These other guys are maybe better basketball players than you. Well, maybe you guys practice, and maybe next time you play, maybe you beat them. But being a basketball player is not the be all and end all of human life. Hardly. It's your character that matters much more than whether whether you can excel athletically or even academically. It's your character that matters, and that's we're on equal playing field here. Some people have more brain power than others. Some people are born with better bodies than others, and so on and so forth. But character, the single most important factor in human life, is an equal playing field. It's all based on choice, and you strive for moral excellence, for honesty, and take responsibility for your own life, and don't blame others, for your failings, and you keep your promises, and you have a strong work ethic and everything.
Yeah.
And this is how you build self-esteem, the same way you build muscle, by lifting weights. So and I think when you have a legitimate self-love that way, this is invaluable. I mean, you could be brokenhearted in romantic love, and it's still going to hurt. You lose the man or woman who's the love of your life. He or she dies or jilts you for somebody else. It's painful, but I think it's doubly painful for somebody who has low self-esteem, because their response is, I'm no good. I'm not worthy of the love. That's why this person, left me. Whereas the person's self-esteem is, well, I lost this woman I love or the man I love. That's painful, but I'm a good person. And that's the most important. And not to say it, but to actually feel it based on your own, in fact, striving for moral excellence.
Yes, that's where it only goes down to a certain point, Andy,
right.
as well. So if we just move on with Frankl's life, 1945, the U.S. comes in and basically liberates, sadly, all the captives in Auschwitz. And Frankl knows he's got to write this book, and as I said, it took him 9 days.
That's right. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning in 9 days.
9 days, yeah. One of 39 books. So it's not like he peaked in 1945 and then that was it, or even in the 20s. As you said, this guy experienced the entire 20th century from Europe, which is that's certainly a longer historical perspective that he had. But it's like 13 years later that the book is finally translated to English, and then it becomes a sensation in America, and has he's lecturing at Harvard, and he's becoming more popular. He's on television shows, and this is where I kind of feel like, okay, he's brought some value, some real legitimate value here, and then there's some mushy stuff I'm not as much sold on. But he was a dominating force in the 20th century. And that's, that's my summary of Frankl as a being, as a thinker, and as a person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he did a lot of good. Is it a part of the Hippocratic Oath? And he was an MD. Isn't it a part of the Hippocratic Oath at the very least do no harm?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, Frankl did a lot of good. I
think of the people whose lives he saved. Yeah. I mean, that's just.
Yeah, and you were talking about, taking lemons. Life gives you lemons and turn into lemonade. There's another way to make that point, and that is, I think Frankl did spiritual alchemy. He turned base metal or lead into gold. He took these agonizing experiences and he transmuted it into something that's positive. That you could eat, and working with his patients and writing his books, which, like you said, sold millions of copies. It's reached many people. So are you going through really painful times? For many people, it's part of the human experience. But can you find meaning in this? Can you find what is there in your soul that makes life worth living, so that you don't commit suicide? Up near where I live, Robert, there's the Interstate 84. There's a bridge across the Hudson River. The Newburgh Beacon Bridge, the I-84. And there's a walkway. I've walked it many times, and there's all these big signs. Life is worth living. And there's a telephone hotline because people commit suicide by jumping off the bridge, which is very sad. But Frankl's message to them is there nothing in life that's worth living for? Is there nothing in your life that has meaning? If you dig deep, your wife of many years just died, or maybe even more painful, your child just died before, but, and it's understandable, this is very painful, but life can still have meaning. For instance, the woman you love or the man you love just died, but loved you and wants you to be happy. And can you go on and find something in your life to live for? It's a wide world out there. There's a lot of things that you might love and might bring passion and purpose and meaning into your life. And Frankl's emphasis on that, I think, has done a lot of good.
Yeah, Andy, I'll just close with one more point precisely on that. He's doing therapy. This is after the war, and he has one older man whose wife died. And the guy is suicidal, and he doesn't know whether he should continue or not. And Frankl asked him a question. Well, if you died before her, what would she be doing now? And he's like, oh, she'd be suffering this incredible weight she'd have on, and I wouldn't want her to have that. And so he's basically saying, look, it's kind of better off that you're the one who's alive now, because you can cope with this and move on. So yeah, always that quest for meaning, always that promise of hope, which I think is something people need, particularly today. Again, we can't emphasize that enough, because you mentioned the Newburgh Bridge. It's a place in New York City, not where I used to live. The Vessel, this incredible I don't even know how to describe it, but I went there the opening day. It's like this walkway that's spiraling, and you go up. They actually had to close it because too many people during the pandemic were committing. They were jumping from the top and just committing suicide. And this is where, you find meaning. I mean, if there's a takeaway here, it's like, be on this quest for meaning in life in dark times.
Right. There was that movie, The Bridge, right? Some filmmaker set up his camera in the park by the Golden Gate Bridge.
The Golden Gate Bridge, yes.
Yeah, for a year, just filmed.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I think it was 20-something people jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge to their death. So yeah, that's very sad. I don't know what these people are going through, and I'm not going to condemn them. But what I love about Viktor Frankl is that he recognized and emphasized the resiliency of the human soul, the strength that could be found in the human spirit to get through these painful times, and find meaning. Meaning is the way. Meaning in your life is is the way to get through it. And, and emphasizing there's so many good things in the world. Can you find something or create something that brings meaning into your life? Like I was lucky. I always want to be a writer, and it's gives me it's great meaning in life. But there's a million different things, different fields that you might love. Computer science, or mathematics, or gardening, being a bricklayer, auto mechanic, because you're fixing things, you're building things, you're constructing things, you're doing positive things, and it could bring meaning into your life at all different levels. And of course, human relationships, romantic love, your close friendships, certainly as a type of love relationship with your children. There's all kinds of ways to find meaning in life, and which enables you to live with passion, enables you to live with a certain joie de vivre, with a joy, with a joyfulness, and gets you through the painful times. So I think we should salute Viktor Frankl for this, Robert.
Yes.
And say, thank you,
well
Dr.
done.
Yeah,
Yes.
well done, indeed, well done. Thank you, Dr. Frankl. And we can recommend Man's Search for Meaning. It's a powerful book.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thin book too. It's actually not even that. Yeah, it's a quick read. Definitely worth it.
There's only a certain amount of words you can write in 9 days. But say thank you to Viktor Frankl, and for us, striving to become the heroes or heroines of our own lives. We take inspiration and great value from this. And everybody out there in Hero Land, I just want to remind you, we will be back again next week, with more stories, true stories of great men and women as we seek to become the heroes and heroines of our own lives. So everybody out there in Hero Land, we'll see you again on the Hero Show next week.